got a phenomenal show for you guys today. A special guest managed to make time in his incredibly busy schedule. I'm speaking of Ronny Leblanc of TV's Expedition Bigfoot, and Paranormal Caught on Tape is here with us. And we're going to dive into his world, take a journey through the lens of his life. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We've got an epic show ahead, but just remember, if any of you have experiences you'd like to share, I'd love to hear from you. You can either email me at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com or head over to paranormalportal.net. Scroll down and find the button that says Interview Me, and that'll allow you to look at a calendar of possible times and dates and find a date that works for you. Love to hear your stories, so definitely get in touch with me. Hey, Ronny, welcome to the show, brother. How you doing?
How you doing, bro? Good to see you.
It's great to see you. For a little background, ladies and gentlemen, Ronny and I met last year at a conference, and we had a ball. We had a lot of fun. We were pretty close to each other. And, our tables were very close, so we had a lot of laughs throughout the course of the conference. But it was really cool to meet you and have a chance to sit back and talk with you and get to know you a little bit. There's probably a million questions, and I know you've done a million interviews, and my last ambition is to repeat every other interview you've done, but there's the elephants in the room we got to get into. And one of which is, how does a person who's passionate about these subjects, how do you make that gap into TV world? I mean, I know you've told your story about your, how you got into it, having childhood experiences and stuff a million times. So yeah. I'm trying to avoid those questions, but I am curious about that. I mean, that's quite an accomplishment to go from a person who's researching and passionate to actually getting a national voice, an international voice.
Yeah. It's a great question. It's funny where, I started watching, as everyone was watching Ancient Aliens and these different shows, and I'm like, all right, who is this guy? How did he get here? And you look at, these experts that are, authors or researchers, podcasters, what have you. Mm-hmm. It's like, I want to do that. And for that whole time growing up, this is the type of material I was reading and devouring. So I kind of looked at that like, oh, that'd be kind of cool to do that. I never really sought out to write a book. That kind of came from these different experiences and circumstances. And everything's been a strange journey where doors have been open and people you meet along the way, you're definitely getting help to get to these certain levels. But once the book had come out, then it was like, okay, now what? Because I had published it myself via Amazon, and now you had to learn how to market this. And I came from that world doing digital advertising, marketing and sales, and working for agencies. So I had kind of somewhat of a game plan. The two things that I wanted to happen, and they happened within a couple of months, which is wild, is I wanted to get the book into the hands of Nick Redfern so that way he could review it for Mysterious Universe. Mm-hmm. And then I wanted to get on Coast to Coast, and because I knew those two things would really help to kind of push it forward. And it ended up, Nick actually came to Leominster for a UFO conference that we were both at. So he read the book, reviewed it, actually did the back jacket of the book, which I was blown away by, and then doing Coast to Coast, which was, hosted by Jimmy Church. And so that really helped to push it forward. But it was a lot of time of doing talks at conferences and doing them for free and just kind of putting in the work and getting your name out there. And the big thing is I knew too with search engine optimization that you got to get your name as people are Googling Bigfoot from Massachusetts, am I popping up to that kind of stuff. So there was a bit of a strategy to help launch the book and then the podcast. And then that just kind of put me on the radar based on the stuff I was talking about. So when I got this, we talked a little bit before we started, I talked to my wife a week before I got the phone call to join Expedition Bigfoot to Phil RPG's shoes, I had told my wife I was all done with this stuff and kind of pursuing it because it became a part-time job on top of my normal job. And I was still trying to manage a family and all this. And it wasn't yielding fruits, let's say, to help pay the bills or things like that. It was just more time away. And then I get that phone call, and that someone had gone down. They need someone to come in and explain that this was an expedition first, a TV show second. And my wife just looked at me like, that's the universe calling, like millions of people, and they called you, like, you're going, this is happening.
Yeah.
And so I had her blessing, and that's been a big piece. And everything I think has just been, if you follow your passions, you discover what your path is, even though you might have to forge it. It may not be there. You might have to whack some weeds and stuff to kind of cut through.
Yeah.
But if you're doing the right thing and you're doing what you're supposed to do on this planet, I think the universe takes care of you. And I feel that's what's happened for me is just kind of following my truth of what I feel is what I'm supposed to do, even though it might seem insane to certain people.
Uh-huh.
But it definitely has been a wild ride, and I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change a thing, and I'm curious what the next 5 years is going to look like. But
yeah,
it's been wild.
It's got to be incredible, and having become familiar with you, and of course following you on Facebook, I don't envy your schedule because it's incredible. You're always hopscotching all over the map. I mean, you're doing conferences and it's wonderful, that you get out there, you're able to talk, you're able to have a platform to share your ideas and views. And of course the Monsterland book is incredible.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah, I mean, you're right. Having an amazing partner that is willing to, help you achieve these dreams and to, realize this vision is incredible, and that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's been a blessing.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of Monsterland, I got to tell you, I've read through a little bit of it, and I was kind of blown away. Now, truth be told, I bought it initially just because I had come to know you at Vernal, and I was like, oh well, I want to help support what he's doing. This is really cool. And
thank you.
Yeah, of course. And you signed my book a couple times, and that was really cool.
Yeah, I remember
that. and we had a lot of fun with it, but I finally cracked it open and started reading. Now, on first blush, I thought, well, Monsterland, Ronny's, into cryptozoology, he's into the, all of this strangeness and stuff. So I figured it was going to kind of be a compendium of several different things and, cross sections of the paranormal, supernatural, Fortean worlds. I was incredibly blown away when I got into the narrative of what Monsterland meant, and that it's a place that you are very, very intimately familiar with, having grown up near there. But all of the strangeness and weirdness in this microcosm of incredible events. I mean, that really took me off guard, and it's amazing. What I've read so far is absolutely amazing.
And since the original book came out, the second book that came out in 2019 with the white cover,
mm-hmm.
And it has since, there's been more craziness. 3 years ago, prior to us moving to our new house, which is on Elm Street, right next to the forest, and we bought another state park. My wife and I had a Thunderbird sighting. Actually, two of them. They were what would be more, I think, described as, say, like a dragon or a phoenix.
Wow.
They were made of like plasma. So these orange orbs that I talk a lot about, that people have seen, these balls of fire, the Foo Fighters.
Sure.
It was this type of material and form, and this was the size of a bus,
Jeez.
Reddish orange, and it was chasing after another one that was green that was the size of a bus as well. And they were moving like dolphins swimming under the ocean, and it was the most insane thing we've ever seen. And prior to this sighting, we're in our... And what happens, I feel like the universe has this Alexa. If you speak out loud, you want to have a UFO sighting, or, oh, I wish a Bigfoot would cross the road. It's like, here, hold my beer. And then something happens. And this is what this is what, we're sitting in our garage, summertime, garage doors open. My wife was having a cigarette, and I was talking about, oh my gosh, in 2 weeks, we're moving to the new house. I'm excited to move here because there's been all this craziness. We're going to see some more nuts stuff.
Right.
And something touched her leg like 30 seconds or so later. And she said, something just like touched me, like I felt like a hand. It happened again a minute later. And then the third time it felt like, she said, feathers brushing against her leg.
Wow.
And I said, I think someone's trying to get your attention. Let's go outside. I just had that overwhelming feeling. We get up, we walk outside, start walking to the house. We look up, and that's when we see those two Thunderbirds. Now, they were completely silent and alive. It was incredible. They fly out of view, and then I had the feeling of don't go anywhere. There's more coming. And so we waited, and then sure enough, here comes this green ball of light, the size of like a beach ball, maybe a little bit smaller. And I was talking about in the book of Ezekiel, talks about a wheel within a wheel.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we were seeing. This thing was like brightening up, and again, completely silent, follows those two, goes out of view. And then my wife finally has the notion to pull out her cell phone and start filming. And off in the distance, there's a smaller whitish bluish Thunderbird moving like a sparrow flying towards us.
Wow.
And low enough for you to see. And so she films 12 seconds of this. It's on my socials. And right before it hits the tree line and disappears, if you freeze frame the video, you see wings.
Wow.
So for me, there's just been so much stuff going on around here. It just seems probable that there's a portal.
Right.
There has to be something, an opening. They're coming from somewhere, and they seem to be eminent. Like someone just sent me a photo yesterday of this orange ball of light that they see every morning as they're passing Route 2 by the old military, the old Fort Devens Army base, which I've discovered recently too that the CIA and the NSA was stationed there, which I still believe they're there.
Sure.
So people are seeing stuff all around there. In Switzerland, they have CERN,
sure,
which is the Hadron Collider. And what people don't know is they're actually building the world's largest right next to Monsterland at Devens with MIT, with it's a fusion reactor type. They're working on nuclear fusion, and it's with the Department of Energy. So there's some interesting things that are happening around here, and I do feel the reason they selected this location is because of the strangeness that's going on.
Yeah,
that's my gut feeling.
Right. It seems that, in terms of locations, like military bases and scientific establishments are sometimes peculiarly situated near some of the strange hotbeds of activity. And I mean, how many stories are there of, service people seeing Bigfoot or Dogman or whatever around the bases? Yeah. And so you gotta wonder, I mean, it couldn't just be dumb luck, although maybe whatever they're doing is triggering activity too. God only knows, right?
So two things. One, there was a Bigfoot sighted on the base in 1989, I believe, from a military police officer. A 7-foot tall amber colored Bigfoot was on the base. He chased it into the Nashua River where it disappeared. Mm-hmm. He then went to file a report with his supervisor and took his supervisor to the location where he had the sighting, and they saw it again. So there's definitely reports that, and I also believe that these bases, their locations were selected based on the activity that was there before.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So it is interesting now. There's a report from 1958 of a course of, I think, 6 to 8 hours or so. There was like 7 or 8 orange orbs that were hovering over the military base, and they didn't know what these things were. And one of them was a metallic sphere. Uh-huh. And so we were seeing reports of those things dropping and landing all over the world, falling out of the sky.
Sure.
And I think today's significant too, right? Where the Vatican is about to announce something about how to deal with paranormal and supernatural phenomena. Have you heard about this?
No.
They're supposed to make an announcement today about something. I just feel like they know a little something, maybe that there's something coming. I don't know, but I find that intriguing.
Yeah, God only knows what's in their archives anay. I mean, who knows? They might have keys to the universe in there. There's certainly a lot of stuff.
A lot of the, Lou Elizondo and some others, they pointed to the fact that the Vatican holds a lot of these secrets because it does, I think, infringe upon Christianity and a lot of the major religions of what these beings are. And, if you talk about, angels and aliens is quite close for me, and, demons, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
There definitely seems to be a spiritual element here, but I'm not one where it's like this good versus evil situation. Right. But I was brought up in the church, and I don't know, you start to kind of see that it's the yin and yang. One needs the other for the whole thing to be held in place, the polar opposites type thing.
Yeah. It is really crazy. I find all of this absolutely fascinating. Obviously, I cover so many things throughout the scope of the show, but I want to get back to those Thunderbird sightings because I think it's incredible. Now, that's one of those phenomena, of course, goes all the way back to, the First Nations and probably before. But did you think it was a physical thing you were seeing or an energetic thing? Was it possible?
Go ahead. Excuse me. It was visible. Like my wife was seeing the same thing. If it was just me,
mm-hmm.
I would wonder if I was getting some kind of mental projection or something like that. But
right.
She was seeing the same thing. And Brent, I kick myself on a daily basis that I didn't start filming immediately upon seeing this, because it was just, and I think I had said to her too, I go, what are we on the set of a science fiction film? It's effing crazy.
Yeah.
I was like, what is going on? And, but yeah, and what's interesting, Dr. Rebecca Foster.
I know the name. I don't know her personally. Yeah.
I think she's a fellow from Minnesota as well, but, she had told me too, you're connected to the Thunderbirds. And she had told me this about 6 months prior to this sighting.
Oh, wow.
And she's a clairvoyant medium.
Sure.
And I thought that was really interesting because it was kind of revealed that to me. And I've had these orange orb sightings and all this connected with Bigfoot right out of the gate when they seem to go hand in hand. My wife has been seeing these green balls of light. She remembered seeing them as a kid entering into this place called Crystal Lake where they used to go camping on the weekends.
Mm.
But Wachusett Reservoir, which is next to Wachusett Mountain out here, is considered sacred area before a lot of the tribes that were here. But she witnessed a green ball light, a huge orb with several people going into the reservoir from the sky from the same point on two separate occasions, 2 weeks apart, and actually witnessed a gray alien peek from behind a tree. And this area has been having those type of sightings going back to the 80s, where people are describing the same type of stuff. So I thought it was interesting with the Thunderbirds that we had this orange and reddish one chasing a green one.
Yeah.
And almost like the representation of each of us. And she was the green color and I'm I had an interesting feeling about that, after just kind of recollecting on what had happened. And again, it just seems so dreamlike, but you just knew like, okay, this was literally about 3 weeks before I was heading off to go to Alaska to film for Expedition Bigfoot. So it was pretty powerful.
That's really cool. I think it's incredibly powerful to think, I don't know if maybe anybody else could have seen what you guys saw, but it was something clearly for you. And it seems to have demonstrated some sort of, purpose in maybe symbolically or spiritually and how your souls are intertwined or whatever. Who can tell?
And the timing too of something touching her. And I have a thing with threes.
Yes.
So when it was the third time, I was like, okay, let's go outside. And literally, like us walking and turning and facing the house, and all of a sudden they're like, boom. Like the timing of it was
impeccable.
The synchronicity. Yeah. The synchronicity. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. That is really cool. And, but the thing is, I think of these great birds as, I was referencing the First Nations stories of the Thunderbirds and how they seem even in the First Nations to be, they're manifest.
Material, right?
Yes.
Like more like that. Exactly how I thought before. When if you told me Thunderbirds, I was just envisioning almost this larger version of an eagle that you'd just be abnormal,
Yeah.
And so when I saw this, and I was like, oh, this is what they are. Because some people have described seeing something that is more tangible.
Yes.
But this looked like they were made of fire. And and it's not like you could see necessarily like eyes, but you could see the shape of this thing.
Right.
Had a form and it was alive.
Yeah.
For however we want to describe that. But man, was it
powerful.
Pretty epic.
Yeah. Well, the thing that it was occurring to me is with a lot of these encounters with strange and unusual things that just kind of defy our imagination, but they're there. We experience them. I have many of my own. And one thing that has really been a consideration through the years of doing this and hearing stories and talking to people is that sometimes it's really neat that you all both saw the same thing, but sometimes there does seem to be a personal filter involved. Like we have a way of translating what we're experiencing. And so two people can see the same phenomena, but see very different representations of it. And it makes
go
ahead, please.
I have a great story that someone had told me about that very same thing and how the power of belief, like you have to have belief, I think, to unlock, to have these sightings. And sometimes someone that doesn't want to believe and doesn't believe will still have a sighting. So that somehow negates it. But this kid was telling me that this was in Western Massachusetts, him, his girlfriend, and a friend. He's a believer. His girlfriend is and the other person is not at all.
Uh-huh.
They're driving down the road and they see a Bigfoot. And he's like, oh my God, there's a Bigfoot on the, And so he sees the full form, hair, this thing, I can't remember, if it was running or standing. The girlfriend, she saw an outline, almost like a shadow type person of that form, but not the full form. And she's the quasi believer, and the girl that didn't believe saw nothing.
Wow.
So I thought that was really interesting. And so now, like you talk about that, it's all about perception, right? It's all about what we see, and we're visual beings.
Right.
And something like that, where it's like the person didn't see it. And if they believed, you would think that probably they would see more of that in our spectrum. And we only see less than 1% of the visual spectrum. So, there's so much shit going on, 99% of the stuff around us. When was the last time you saw an atom, or...
True. Yeah.
But we're told that they, and what I find fascinating too is just even the fabric of our reality. Like we are under the impression that we know everything, and the smartest people have it figured out. And let's just rest assured that they got it.
Right.
I just read yesterday, Science Journal, I believe it was, that they just discovered that water can evaporate with light, even if heat isn't present. They've always thought that light would generate the heat, but light can actually evaporate water without a temperature change.
Wow.
And so this is something that that little subtle shift, and we go, oh, okay, how's this working?
Right.
Even taking and they don't understand this. I think it's an air bubble underwater. I forget what it is, but then suddenly this light forms. They don't know where this light is coming from. Oh. So there's just so many things. You get the double slit experiment, and then you have to have the observer for reality. So you have all these things that you start to go, okay, what is going on? You know, we've all experienced deja vu, and these different things. I've noticed my dreams are getting a little bit more intense. And actually, I woke up, and I won't say specifically what this was, but I've been trying to make a decision about something, and went to bed. And in my dream, I was figuring out this situation, and then had kind of made a decision in the dream. So when I woke up, I had this confirmation that I knew what I had to do, because the dream world confirmed what I have to do in the physical world.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'll accept that. So, and that's something that's always interested me, the Native American way of life, but understanding and growing up in the church that there's a spirit world that we don't see, the unseen world that does interact with us and seems to participate in our daily lives, and in people that have passed on are still communicating and interacting with us in real time. Tells me that they are in another place, that consciousness doesn't just evaporate, that it kind of goes on. So I do believe that we're in some sort of a school here.
Yes, me too.
Like, hey, these are the things you have to kind of figure out. And I just found that talking with people, making people laugh, learning from other people about things, different ideas, that's what this is all about, is just starting to understand that we're all connected. The karma's real, all these different things. You start to, and you look at the older generation, and what are they talking about on their deathbeds? And it's not, I wish I worked more. That's not what they're saying.
Should have mowed my lawn better.
Oh, it's so close to green.
One thing, and I've got a pet theory. I hope you don't mind if I bounce it off you.
Please.
Because I think that you are incredibly knowledgeable and well researched in this, and as well as, I think that you have a lot of spiritual insight. I've been coming to believe that we often think of the paranormal supernatural as these things that happen to us. They just occur and they happen to us, and we're these powerless observers. But I really believe that in some form or fashion, we are facilitating these events. And let me just kind of spell it out for you a little bit and see what you think. Now, again, getting back to what your example of the person who had seen a Bigfoot, another person saw the form of a Bigfoot, and another person saw nothing at all. And these are three people observing something in the same space, but they all had very different experiences. So what occurs to me is that we are probably on some level facilitating these experiences through our filters and through our beliefs and through our manifestation into this plane of reality. And perhaps, where we get things like, you get stories of phasing Bigfoot and, these aliens coming through walls and stuff. And perhaps we are actually traveling or at least adapting to their vibration. It could be because a lot of times people see Bigfoot in the forest. Well, when you're in the forest, you're in this maybe more of a theta state of mind, more of that hypnotic state of mind.
Yes.
And you are more open, and, you're just in this receiving mode, and suddenly a big hairy being comes out. And so there you are in this moment, you're perceiving it. It's perceiving you. You're both in this, maybe a quantum entanglement of some sort. And then the shock sets in. It's like, oh my God. Well, suddenly you're out of that theta state and the Bigfoot melts away, And so, and the reason I like this theory personally is because it feels incredibly humbling and humiliating to think that we're somehow these powerless, ping pong balls popping, and these other things have complete control and we're just at the whims. But maybe we are facilitating it, and that to me is empowering. that we are a part of creating this circuit of experience. Does that make sense?
It does. It falls in line with your higher self. Mm-hmm. These other dimensions that it's you kind of guiding yourself through these processes. And as you're describing, people seeing different things, it's almost like we're all individually wearing VR headsets, right? And we're going into the same game, but we're all seeing things a little bit differently. And we might have an upgrade where we start to see things more on this, like you said, this other vibration that we can naturally get there. Or some people just have an innate ability, the gift that they can see these things, or these things identify and know that this person has a receiver that can. And so that's what I feel happens to me at times. Doesn't happen all the time, but I do feel like I get recognized by these things that he's open to this. Like he's sending out this signal, and I'll give an example. And Sir David Attenborough talks about the discovery of flowers that they actually emit this low negative electrical charge that we can't hear, but they put up this, connected a sensor to it. And they discovered that the bees, the honeybees, emit a positive charge. And they're literally, that's how they find each other. And when the bee lands in the flower, it stops sending out that signal, but the pollen literally jumps. It doesn't get caught onto the feet. It literally jumps like a magnet from the flower to the bee, and the bee flies off, and then that flower stops emitting that electrical charge. And so I think that we do, we're bioelectrical beings, right?
Sure.
So we're emitting a frequency out there, and your frequency, the resonant frequency thing where you connect that, I think they can pick up on this, the Bigfoot. I also think another discovery that I learned of this year is they talked about that humans actually glow.
Yeah. We
can't see it with our eyes, but imagine if a Bigfoot has this capacity to see, if they are interdimensional, let's say, but even if they're at a higher state where vision, like certain animals can see ultraviolet light, etc. Mm-hmm. We must look like flashlights walking into the forest to them and be like, this guy ain't hiding. He's glowing. I can see him,
Yeah. Oops.
So I think of that kind of stuff. And I don't know. I looked at the researchers that have been doing this for such a long time, mm-hmm. whether it's UFOs or Bigfoot cryptozoology, that they just come to this conclusion after 50 years of research and boots on the ground, and like, there's something interdimensional going on here. Yeah. I'm going to listen to them. I'm not going to try to let me start from the beginning and see if I can. I want to learn from what they've done, from their mistakes.
Right.
And just pay attention to. Yeah. And I guess I just have more of a conviction because of my personal experiences that have pushed me even kind of. People ask, how has your view changed with doing the show and what Bigfoot is and what it isn't? And I say it's only been, solidified from those experiences that there's something else going on with these things. And again, you listen to Native American stories and what they say these things can do. And yeah,
it's incredibly interesting. And, I unfortunately, I'm just cringing now because we're going to run out of time before I run out of talk. And,
please, let's rock.
Well, there's a few elephants in the room again that I want to address. And, another one is just because I love this deep talk. I really do. But I do want to make sure to visit some of these other points and things going on in your world as well. But what is what you see on like Expedition Bigfoot versus what you actually experience doing it? I mean, obviously things are edited down and you're not going through a week long expedition in an area or whatever it is. But what is that like? And how is that experience for you just doing it for the first time?
I'm very all about authenticity and being true to form. And so I'm a bit of a stickler when I see some editing that maybe is off time, or sometimes you have to make everything kind of work. They have the editing that they have to do, and every 20 minutes or whatever, it is. So they have to move. Our attention spans are like this.
Yeah.
So for me, I like to be able to see it as it happens as much as possible. We don't have any control over editing or what things they use, but I will say anything that we seem to be able to encounter or capture, like, man, the shadow, the cloaking that we captured in Washington State in season 3 was so epic and important for me because it just showcases the woo side, showcases the cloaking. No one's ever, to my understanding, captured something like that on national television. So that makes me proud that we capture things like that. And there's other things too, like I talked about this before. I think it was the second day that I arrived filming in Oregon, and they were interviewing Maria off to the side. Typically we'll have one camera guy with each of the talent as we're going out. And we try to keep a minimalized footprint when we're out there for lighting, for sound, for all these things. You're just going to have if you're going out with 15 people, you're not going to run into stuff. So we've been lucky with that. But one thing I learned really quick is, hey, if there's something happening, like, let us know. Mm-hmm. And so they're filming her off to the side, and I'm just sitting there in the dark off and just kind of listening. And suddenly I turn around and I see this white ball of light, low enough that I could throw a rock at it, floating silently over me. And I'm like, holy crap. And I take my flashlight out and hit it with the beam, and it stops midair and just hovers as I hold the flashlight beam on it. And it didn't disappear. I could still see it solid. I couldn't see inside of it. And I was like, kind of like looking back, I don't know if I should scream to them to come. Like, I got this amazing orb and I didn't know what to do. So I shut off the flashlight, and it then resumed, and it just continued to go and over the mountain. Wow. And I was like, what? And I was like, and so then they wrapped up, and I ran over because I see that, they're coming down. My guys, and they were so pissed. They're like, we're trying to capture this. I don't care if we're filming an interview, like, scream and get us, Yeah. So that was one of those things where we're like, all right, everyone needs to have their camcorders, or something like this happens again. And it was just like, wow, you do have to be on your toes. So there's things like that we could have captured and had on film, which would have been amazing.
Right. Yeah.
And also one that was really cool that I think we actually caught a UFO on one of the time lapse cameras. So they're setting up things to do B-roll and things, right? So they're seeing the sunset, the stars. Yeah. And a Tesla Cybertruck just drove by. That was pretty cool.
Oh, nice.
So we were, it was pretty incredible. We were getting ready to, I think we might have just had a meal and we're eating and we're getting ready to go back out. Uh-huh. And Maria had her flashlight, and the stars were pretty incredible. And I think we're talking about UFOs. And so anyway, she hits the flashlight and the beam just goes straight up. Okay. Mm-hmm. It zooms in, it focuses on this one star, and the star starts to go like this inside the flashlight's beam. And we're like, what the? It wasn't a moth, right? Wow. And we shut it off, and the star stopped. Wow. She hit the light again, and then all of a sudden that star started going. But what was so weird is the fact that she just hit the light right there, and it just happens to be in the beam and then do this performance. And it was the craziest thing. And I remember she was looking like, what the? I'm like, that's a freaking UFO,
Oh, wow.
But that's something that we just didn't even get on camera, that we didn't even talk about. So some of those things that I really think should be in there. And a lot of times the network doesn't like to break the fourth wall, as they call it.
Sure.
But we started to, that started to crack because, Russ and his cameraman, Zach is such a big personality. He's no longer, with the show now. He's actually working with Mr. Beast.
Oh, okay.
But,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, but, and he's a showrunner for him, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, good for
him. But he became kind of, a character, so to speak, because, he represented it. He's like, Russ, what are you doing? Like, where are you going, man? Like, and he really is generally gets freaked out when he's out there, but he's from Kentucky. He's from the woods, but those things you're capturing, those are real. People see like that's you. Like, yes, I'm not. People like, you're an actor. I'm not an actor, man. Like what you're seeing is me. Like with the book, everything I talk about, these are all real experiences. And yeah, I'm a weird dude. I don't know what's going on. Something's following me, man. Help me out, people.
Yeah.
No, but it's just, I think, people are kind of amazed that this stuff is going on.
Right.
But there's a lot of people that have had experiences that are very similar, and they're starting to kind of go, okay. Like I just met I had 60 people come to a talk of the library in Gardner, about 15 minutes away from here. And we're right smack dab. They know this area, Monsterland, and people are like, I had several people talking about experiences and things that are coming up to their house and different sightings that they're seeing. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of stuff that's going on right in suburbia that people would be blown away to realize that's going on.
I think that's a great takeaway too, because a lot of times we think we have to go like to places in order to experience things. But yeah, I do paranormal investigating as well, looking for, evidence of ghosts and hauntings and stuff. But I happen to live in a home. This home is pretty active from time to time. It's gotten pretty peaceful now, but when we first got here, it was kind of pumping. And, you just don't know. This stuff is not on a schedule. It just, it happens when it happens for whatever reasons it happens that we can't even begin to fathom and understand. But it's incredibly powerful and profound. And it just, these moments, it'd be nice if they were scheduled, because imagine the show you could put together then, right?
Exactly. And that's the one thing that I find really intriguing with doing TV. They don't expect things to happen.
Sure.
Right? They're, a lot of them are like, okay, let's record the process of what you would do if you brought in this piece of tech,
Mm-hmm.
And so at the very least, they're like, at least if nothing happens, we're getting this.
Right.
But we've struck gold quite a few times, with the show and capturing things happening like that. Yeah. And I do think, if you can be in the right areas where there's a lot of that activity, mm-hmm. you have a higher probability of having things happen.
Yeah.
But I also feel that, the fact that these things, in my opinion, both UFOs, Bigfoot, a lot of these other cryptids are interdimensional, that they can essentially materialize anywhere. It doesn't have to be out in the woods. It can be right in your house. Yeah. So a lot of people talk about doing a night investigation in the forest or what have you, and actually encountering a Bigfoot type experience or encounter, and then go home, and then suddenly they're seeing shadow people in the house, and these orbs are flying around, and you might equate it to something that's more of a poltergeist, but it seems to be coming from the woods that, and maybe it is that same thing, and they are seemingly more spiritual, because there's different researchers that talk about some of that stuff. Mm-hmm. I've experienced the mind speak, but the other way. So we started having rocks, which I had no idea. We had rocks hitting our shed in the backyard. Every time we would be out there, it'd be like a little rock would just, and I was kind of like, The acorns aren't fallen yet. So I just assumed maybe like, I don't know, a squirrel up top eating something.
Sure.
I didn't pay attention to it, but this was going on for a couple of weeks until my wife was out on the porch, and our property abuts Barrett State Park. So we literally have a forest right to the right of us, and Leominster State Forest is right down the road.
Oh, nice.
And it's awesome. I walk out of my driveway and I have a trail and go right into the woods. We have a brook that runs through the back. It's like a Garden of Eden. We have a waterfall down a little ways here.
Wow.
But she's on the porch, and we have a chain link fence so we can see into the woods. And suddenly something was crashing through the woods. She was hearing branches breaking, and it was just like something large. And she was on the phone with her sister, peering in there. She couldn't see anything, and she's yelling for me at the same time to come outside. Like something's happening. Like she's expecting to see a bear or a moose or something. And suddenly a rock comes flying out of the woods and hits the shed so loud that her sister can hear it on the other side, and it actually makes like this hole in the shed.
Oh, geez.
And so I come running out, and she's telling me something big. I was yelling for you. Something big is back here. I can't see it. I don't know where it is, but a rock just came flying out of it and hit the shed. I'm like, what? So go over there, and I see the hole in the shed, and she said it didn't like arc over. It came like straight like a major league pitcher kind of thing.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, okay. And so then it dawned on me like, wait, this has been happening for a couple of weeks now. Like there's no rocks. Like no way. Looking around, it could be a kid, of course, but we have the way our backyard is set up in the woods. It's very you'd be able to see somebody through there. They can't escape that. It's very swampy in the back.
Sure.
And so I'm looking around. I don't see anything, and it dawns on me. I'm like, hey, you know a remote viewer, Chris Duncan. Why don't you send him a note and see if he can zoom in right now in the backyard? So I was like, I texted Chris Duncan, who we had on the show. He's a test pilot for Space Force. Wow. He's worked on black projects for the Army, and he's a remote viewer. And so I texted him, and he responded, and I said, hey, can you do me a favor? I go, I think we're having some Bigfoot activity in my backyard. Can you zoom in? Here's my address. So giving him coordinates like they would do with the longitude and latitude.
Sure.
And he was like, yeah, let me check it out. And so kind of waiting, I'm looking around, and I see him respond back. He goes, yep, you're on to something. I'm like, what?
Yikes.
And he goes, there's two of them. He goes, there's a juvenile that's cloaked, that's throwing the rocks, and there's a parent that is standing by watching this, and they're trying to engage with you, I guess. I'm like, okay. And for me, I believe in remote viewing. I believe in the cloaking. Even that for me was like, yeah, right. Like what? You know, it was hard for me to accept that, even though, you know, I'd be the first to be like, yeah. So I was like, okay, this is wild. I'm telling Amy this, and she's, you know, she's very accepting at stuff, but she's still kind of like, she's not buying into she's kind of like very staying safe on it.
Sure.
So anyways, I was like, okay, nothing happened after that. I had to go leave and do the Michigan UFO contact conference. I did that, and it was on my mind this whole time that what happened. So when I came back home, I think I came home at like 11 or 12 o'clock at night, and I couldn't sleep. And it was like 3:30, 4 in the morning, and I was about to go to bed. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go outside and see if I can interact with this thing. It's 3:34 in the morning. So I go onto my porch. I'm in my backyard, all quiet. Now, I didn't say a word. I just, with my mind, I was like, I'm going to try something, and I'm going to project and see if this thing is real, right? So I mentally just said, okay, if you're real, throw a rock at the shed right now. And this, again, using my mind, just projecting this out. Sure. And I said, right frickin' boom, a rock hits the shed.
Jeez. Wow.
Brett, I haven't felt this too often. A wave of like energy and fear literally started from the top of my head and worked its way down my entire body. Like I got poured with a bucket of liquid, and I was like, holy shit. My daughter, the top floor, my second oldest daughter, opens the window, and we had talked about all this. We're pretty open with the kids of what's going on.
Sure.
Dad, I heard that. I heard it.
Ooh.
And I literally just said out loud, okay, got it. You're the boss. I'm going back inside. And I went back in. Yeah. And that was pretty incredible to me. Like, what are the odds of, again, the timing of that? And did I just hear that bang in my mind? Did it really happen? Nope. It got confirmed by my daughter who heard it from upstairs. And my daughter Lena has, all my kids have had experiences, but my daughter Lena, I had this orb picture that is in the book, and that had captured this. Some lady had told me, you can see these things, you can take pictures of them, go outside at night, communicate that you want to see them, shut your flash off your phone, start snapping pictures, they'll show up. I'm like, okay. So I did this and I said it out loud. Just love to capture a photo of you. I'm going to shut the flash off right now. And so I just started I took 4 photos, no flash, but I could see the picture take. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take one more. And I looked away and I took the picture and then I saw a flash. Oh. And I was like, shit, I put the flash on. Yeah. And I was like, well, I'm not even going to look at it yet. I'll wait till I get home. I don't want to ruin the moment type thing. So I put it in my pocket. My kids are like, Dad, what are you doing? I'm like, nothing, I was picking them up from my parents' house and they were a little bit younger and I brought them back. So we get to the house and now this lady that I had met that told me about these orbs and was showing me pictures of them in and outside of her house, these white orbs, had told me that she works with the angelic realm. Melchizedek, Metatron, and these other beings, okay? And I was really fascinated by this one, the Ascended Masters, and that's another thing I'm really interested in. Sure. Became friends with her, she communicated this, whatever, so I get to the house, kids right inside, I pull up my phone, and I look at that 5th picture, and it's an orb that's streaked across this screen. Wow. And I captured it, and it looks like, it's like stretched all the way, like it just literally zoomed right in front of the lens perfectly, right across. Wow. And so I sent that to her and I sent the message and I said, I captured one. It worked, what you said to do. And she goes, whoa. She goes, I just got your name 5 minutes ago. She was typically, I'll hear, they will say your name. Sometimes it's just the first name, but they said Ronny Leblanc. And she goes, when that happens, within 24 hours, that person will get in touch with me or I'll run into them. And she said, within 5 minutes, you called me. Wow. And I was like, whoa, that's wild. Yeah. And again, it was a very energetic, crazy experience. Well, it didn't end there because my daughter Lena's in the kitchen. And as we're standing there, I look in the doorway and suddenly this light being appears. The form of a head, shoulders, torso of the brightest white light appears in the doorway, like comes on and then basically turns off. And I'm like, oh my God. And Lena, my daughter, was standing right next to me and goes, Dad, did you see that? I go, you saw that? I go, what'd you see? She said, I just saw what looked like an angel, like a light being. I'm like, oh my God. Wow. And it was incredible. It was incredible that we saw that together. And again, tied it with the orb and her talking about the angelic realm. And I was like, oh, this is real. Yeah. Like, this is real. So, and it's funny, like me telling that story, it's like kind of reminding myself, okay, there's bigger things at play. There's other things that may be orchestrating things. Yeah. That was incredible. But one thing that just came to mind, the idea of manifesting things, right? Mm-hmm. I I remember this is how into Bigfoot I was. My wife was working, and I had the little kids. Asia, my kids were like 5 or 8 or something, and this was at our old house. I used to draw and do a lot of just different kind of art stuff. Well, I got inspired to then suddenly draw an enormous Bigfoot on my bedroom wall. I drew it out like enormous, like life size.
Sure.
And I did it with a pencil, and then I was like, oh, we're going to do a little project with the kids. Let's paint. So the kids were like kind of painting and stuff. Asia drew a tail on it, which actually looked like a penis. So I had to paint that one over. But so my wife gets home and opens the door and literally shrieks, like she thinks something's in the room and sees this huge thing on the wall. She's like, "What the hell are you doing?" Uh-huh. But it became like a funny thing where people would come over and want to see this thing. But I called it Sully the Sasquatch, right? And it was a little bit more like kid friendly for the kids.
Sure.
But one of my friends was like, "Dude, you're manifesting something by doing this, you know, like you're giving this thing, this photograph, almost this image for it to actually come into play." And I kind of thought that was interesting that we had a lot of activity at the house. I think prior to that, there was stuff going on, but that might have had some kind of a play of kind of creating things to start happening. But yeah, I had no idea there was stuff going on around my neighborhood in this area until I started digging into it, because people just don't talk. They don't, and there weren't any books or things written about this, any videos. Mm-hmm. So it was really like starting to peel back. But I think there's a lot more of these type of, we talked about earlier, these microcosm of activity all over Indiana and different places too, that I'm hearing from residents that there's a lot of stuff going on. Yeah. And maybe that's being amplified a little bit lately because of things that are starting to happen. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I think you're right. I think we're in we're in kind of a transitional state where it seems like more people we're kind of outgrowing that old, it's like trying to wear old shoes that are way too small and they just don't fit anymore. And you just you got to break away. And that's kind of like the paradigm. It seems like we're shifting out of that paradigm. Like it doesn't fit anymore. We're not okay with that status quo. We're I mean, maybe by virtue of us being these spiritual, energetic beings, we are programmed, for lack of a better term, to expand and to grow and to learn. And we can't do that in the frameworks that were set out. I've many times I've said, and I'm not patting myself on the back, but I think this is really true. Oftentimes people regard this weirdness as, well, that's just where things glitched. That's just where things went sideways. But I think these are the breadcrumbs. These are the breadcrumbs leading us to higher understanding, because things are being demonstrated to us that aren't supposed to be able to happen. And so obviously there's a huge paradigm shift going on when, with experiencers and with other people that are just looking for knowledge. Like they don't know why, but it seems like we're on this trajectory to move beyond a lot of these dogmatic principles that have been containing us and our spirit for so long. So
yeah, I do agree with that. I do feel it is a spiritual awakening that you're supposed to understand. You're not just like we leave this vessel, right? Mm-hmm. Our spirits take off, and these things, we go back to becoming mushrooms and everything else. And I think we forget that, and we start to. The one thing too I look at is just the fear of speaking your mind, taking risk, again, things that aren't going to be hurting or jeopardizing somebody, but your intentions are for the good of things.
Yeah.
If we talked about a little bit about this, where people their deathbed, what are they talking about? And a lot of them are like, oh, I wish I didn't care what people thought about me.
Yeah.
And I did things that really I was passionate about, or I tried and took a chance. Like, who cared? We're always afraid to fail.
Yeah.
But I think that's the part of the learning process, so.
Yeah.
You have to get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of learning processes, I mean, you've obviously you've worked for years now with Maria. She's just an amazingly kind person. I was very taken aback by meeting her. I would have assumed just by thinking, oh well, she's a scientist, she's a doctor, she's dedicated her life to research and stuff, that she would have been much more of a clinical type of person, but. She is this warm, engaging, kind, wonderful person, and that must be
very
amazing.
Approachable.
Yeah, I was really surprised by that. But I gotta ask you, how do you put up with Russ?
No. Russ is. You have to be on your toes with Russ.
Yes, I know.
On the wit side, because he can whip out some really funny things and some of the what we call the dad jokes.
Yeah.
And also he'll tackle you. He'll punch you in the ribs.
It's like a big brother, yeah. I gotta say, the conference before I met you, Russ and I were kind of going back and forth, and he's a practical joker. I didn't really know that about him. I know he's got a quick wit and he's funny, and he's a fantastic guy. But I was sitting there watching the speaker and stuff, and suddenly he comes up behind me and kind of gives me like a shoulder rub, and I was like, oh, hey Russ, how's it going? He's like, good, pats me on the back and then walks away. And I'm standing there watching and so I'm going to walk away, and an old lady said, "Excuse me." I'm like, "Yeah." She goes, "You got a bunch of paper towel hanging off your back."
You know what's so funny?
What?
Literally, as you're saying that, Russ just texted me.
We summoned him.
It literally just came up.
Yeah, just another fantastic guy.
His ears must be ringing.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a good dude. He'll shift the energy in the room. You know what I mean? He'll come in, make you start laughing. Every time I see him, big bear hugs. He's not afraid to tell you, "Hey, I love you." He's a good dude.
Yeah, he really is. And it's really such incredible chemistry you guys got going on with having these different, as we were talking before the show, different lenses that you're examining this amazing phenomena with, and it makes for compelling instances. And I've been watching the show for years. I'm behind, but I watch when I can squeeze in some time. I definitely love sitting back and watching what you guys had done. The Paranormal Caught on camera, I think is pretty fantastic too. I do love watching that. Again, with those kind of things, I don't know if basically what goes on in the front end of that, but there's a whole internet full of alleged videos and proof and stuff. And are they pretty careful about what they vet before they create the show?
They are. I mean, they're always trying to get videos that are picking up steam and viral. They do have to license these videos.
Sure.
There's times like we'll get a list, typically anywhere from 7 to 8 videos per episode to review. And there's just in this last batch of videos, there was one in particular that I was like, I'm not commenting on this one. Like for me, my vibe is this looks like faked or hoaxed or, I don't feel comfortable commenting on this one. And if enough of us are in agreement with that, it never makes it. It gets cut off. And that doesn't happen all the time.
Sure.
I would say maybe once every 6 shoots or something like that. So they're pretty good about it. And there's certain things that maybe we might know the backstory of how this video came about and nobody else kind of gets it. So we just go, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Like Aaron Sagers and I are on the show. So there'll be things where, hey, have you seen this one yet? And I'm like, nope, I'm doing it tomorrow. I'm watching it tonight. And what's your thoughts? And I'm like, yeah, this is okay. Or this is, yeah, no, you're right. So there's things that we're all pretty much in agreement on that but it definitely is what I like about the show is they're trying to select videos that are that are showing that there's something happening as opposed to, look at this, is this so they're trying to vet these where these seem to be, they've made it, they've bubbled up to be potential real videos. And that's what they're really trying to do. And that's what I do enjoy watching that, because we've seen enough of the shows where they're debunking everything of why this isn't. And some of those shows, they have an agenda to make sure that they're debunking all those things. So,
yeah. No, it's a great show. I love watching that too, because I do like looking at those videos. I think, with online, evidence, it's kind of tough because of course there's a million ways to fake things. There's no way to test it, so you're just blindly looking at it going, is it believable? Is it not? And what do I think is going on here? But I think those videos are still amazing. I think there are some incredible gems online, but it does take, you gotta have a pretty robust filter to get to those, I think, and
people can, we got AI now, which is making things even more difficult.
Yeah.
So
I think you're right. No, I wonder, do you watch many, like ghost investigative shows? I don't know what you even have time to watch, to be honest.
No, I used to.
Did you?
One of the things that, and I talked to Jason Haas is a buddy of mine from Ghost Hunters. And, this last summer we had like 4 conferences in a row every weekend. So we were going out to dinner and with the wife and everything. But we used to watch, when we first got together, these ghost hunting shows all the time. It was just a fun thing to watch. And so I don't watch them as much anymore, but you kind of seeing the same thing being done. You start to see some fresh, like the Estes method and these other different techniques, which I think are refreshing to see. But yeah, I try to watch as much stuff as I can. I'm definitely behind on watching a lot of UFO and Bigfoot stuff as well. Like, James Fox is finishing up his latest documentary, The Program, and he lives about 3 hours from me. He's up in Vermont.
Okay.
And I met him this past, was it January in Vegas for a conference, and we became best buds instantly. And so he invited me to come to his house and actually be one of the first to screen it. So I'm hoping he just got back this week. So I'm hoping I'm going to be doing that next week and maybe do a little video about it, because, I'm excited to see this new documentary, and it's supposed to be insane.
Oh, wow.
The people that he interviewed and the things that are going to come, from this documentary.
Oh, fantastic.
So
that's really cool.
So when you talk about the paradigm shift with UFOs, I think it's happening.
Yeah.
Before our eyes.
I think you're right. I think you're right. I don't think we'll ever move towards a quote unquote disclosure, but I don't think we need it anymore. Like we don't need that. We don't need that governmental validation for this, because so many people are experiencing things, and so many people are coming to terms with the fact that, hey, something's here, whether they're extraterrestrial or extra dimensional or whatever that means. And maybe it's one and the same. I don't know if space and dimensional vibration are kind of one and the same, that the further away something is. I don't know. I've always had that intuitive feeling, but I can't quantify that because I'm not a scientific person. But, I know that your time is tight, but I do want to take a little time and talk about your other venture, which I think is really cool. Weedscape. So can you kind of lay out what this is? This is another entrepreneurial venture on your part, but it's really cool.
Yeah, it's something that a friend of mine started. He came up with the idea about 3 years ago. And when he talked to me about the idea, and the reason he approached me is prior to me joining Expedition Bigfoot, I was working in the cannabis industry out here in Massachusetts, which just became legalized for medical. And when I came on board, they were opening the gates for recreational.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was working with a company out here that I was handling their marketing and advertising and helping launch these new stores. So it was something that I started working this job. It was super cool, brand new industry, and I was excited to kind of leverage my experience from the digital world into this new industry. Mm-hmm. And that's when I got the call for Expedition Bigfoot. So I was like, oh. I knew that if I was going to go do this in film for over a month, that I probably wouldn't have my job when I got back, even though they said you would. So unfortunately, didn't have a gig when I got back. And it was still just a passion. My sister passed away of cancer 12 years ago. And cannabis was something that she used to help with appetite, to help her sleep. Mm-hmm. I've been a fan of the plant since I was 16, but for more recreational purposes. Yeah. But I saw now the healing properties of this, mm-hmm. this plant and what it could do. So the idea that my friend approached me with, who's, works in the court systems and has been for 27 years, came up with this idea, longtime gardener, and found this loophole that in the state of Massachusetts that you could grow, cannabis now in your backyard, outside, outdoors with certain parameters. You have to have a fence and all these things. Okay. But the one piece that really struck me, I thought that was cool. The first time in history you can actually grow cannabis legally in your backyard. But was the conjunction of the idea of what weedscape is, weed, cannabis, but then also weeds. So the monarch butterfly, which their population has been decimated because their evolution, that food source that they rely on, that they lay their eggs on, is the milkweed. Oh. And there's a variety of different milkweeds. And when I grew up as a kid, we had fields and farms and these meadows that had milkweed, and you would see hundreds upon thousands of monarch butterflies flying around. And because of all the condos and construction and properties going up, those go away and those food sources go away, and you start to see that decline. Same with the bee populations and different things with climate change and all these things that are happening with monocropping. Yeah. So that was appealing to me, and his idea was I want to incorporate these pollinator plants with the weedscape garden. And the idea would be that you have your 6 to 12 cannabis plants with a fenced garden around that. And there's 100-foot radius where you have all these pollinator plants. And this would bring in the bees and the hummingbirds and the butterflies. And so we set up the first ever weedscape garden in my backyard, a 12 by 12 fenced garden with a 100-foot radius of, we started with 15 different pollinator plants. We now have 30 Native American plant species that we're using. We actually have a greenhouse, a company that's growing a lot of these for us. So we get them as plugs so we can go in and actually put these in. Oh, cool. And so the idea is that we're trying to be very discreet, where you'd have a Suburban pull up to your yard, your house. There's no like branding or anything like that. We would set up the garden. We plant the seeds. We have a geneticist, this guy by the name of Kyle, who's the VP of horticulture for one of the largest dispensaries in Massachusetts called Garden Remedies. And so he's a part of Weedscape and actually has gotten genetics from Spain and different areas, strains that no one has ever had before we have, cool. that are meant to be grown in New England and New Brunswick in this type of weather. Mm-hmm. So they're acclimated to the climate. And the idea would be, so say you're someone, hey, I have trouble sleeping, or I have anxiety, or you might have a variety of different things. he will find the strains that will work with your body chemistry to actually help you sleep. You would take this strain, and it doesn't have to be that you're smoking a joint or doing a bong rip. These things can be then turned into edibles and chocolates and different ways, other delivery methods that might be considered more healthy.
Sure.
And it's pretty amazing. Like his dad had back surgery and got addicted to opiates. And the way to get him off of that was to use these edibles and had more CBD and not so much, so there's all these things that you can do. There's over 9,000 different strains, and they're creating new ones by cross-pollinating. I mean, it's so like lab focused now. It's pretty insane. But we just think that, cannabis should be for the people. It should be easily grown just like tomatoes.
Sure.
We shouldn't have to then go and buy this and then pay tax and all this other stuff. It definitely helps our states and the cities and things like that. But I think it's not a threat what we're doing. No one's done this before, which is pretty cool. But it's also not a threat to the industry by any means. I kind of equate it to learning to brew your own beer.
Right.
You're still going to go out and buy a 12-pack.
Yeah.
But you're actually going to enjoy growing your own cannabis. Like last summer, I had so many bees and butterflies and dragonflies flying around my backyard and all these birds. And after going through COVID, that was another big piece. Is like, imagine we have to go through that type of situation again.
Yeah.
If you don't have the woods like I do, but if you had something like this where you can create this little ecosystem in your backyard, that you actually can go and sit with nature, and it's pretty cool. And it's been a fun process when we harvest in the fall. So we have a bunch of friends come over, and everybody gets something to take home in a couple of weeks once it dries. It's kind of
fun. That's really cool, and what a great concept. Again, I mean. Honestly, the usage of plant medicines is as old as civilizations or, people.
Yeah.
And
6,000 years. That we've seen evidence of cannabis being used as, inflammation, remedies or different medicinal properties.
Right.
And now even, hemp. Pretty amazing. There's 50,000 plus uses for hemp. They're talking about, hempcrete. This concrete that you can't, things that you can't even burn. Yeah. They're using hemp for areas that have radioactive waste or toxic metals.
Oh, wow.
You plant hemp and actually it pulls and eradicates that out of the soil. So pretty fascinating, story too, when it comes to William Hearst and these other big, players in the lumber, worlds that really stopped hemp and cannabis from becoming something that would be legalized in the U.S. And that's why we're seeing that change, that revision with that.
Well, I think it's a phenomenal idea, and I like the idea of natural substances rather than Franken chemicals, that are often utilized in our modern societies. And I think getting back to that natural vibration of things is so powerful. And I think we don't even, we've probably lost so much knowledge through the time that our ancestors knew and relied on. And so I'm glad that there's efforts like yours to go back and revisit those and to help populate the idea that, hey, this is already something that we're very familiar with. I know that our bodies have cannabinoid receptors in them naturally. Right. So, I mean, we're conditioned.
I was just going to say that. Not many people are aware that we have an endocannabinoid system, that our body chemistry is set up and designed by the creator or whoever to consume cannabis, which is from the earth. So it doesn't get more natural than that.
Exactly. And the only side effect is you might like cookies a lot more.
Yeah. I'm a weird cat. I'm one that I'll smoke and go run 5 miles.
Really?
Certain, like, and that's like a strain that someone might smoke and be like, oh man, I gotta chill on the couch. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go to the gym and I'll be back. I use it. I don't know what it is. And It's cool.
Well, I'll tell you what else is cool is that you've made the time to come on the show and talk with me. Again, I know we're already over by a bit, and so I apologize, but I don't regret the discussion at all. I just have loved this, and I know we've got miles and miles more that we could talk about. Hopefully we can make some return visits happen if you're open to that.
That would be great. I was going to suggest that maybe we do this again so we can continue the conversation.
Absolutely, brother.
I've enjoyed my time as well.
Oh, very good. Do you mind taking a few minutes and letting people know how to stay in touch with what you're doing? Sure. Weedscape with your socials or whatever.
Absolutely. So the company is called Weedscape. It's the website is weedscape.net. That's one thing. I actually built the website, and I need to do some more updates on that. But we started doing some library talks within Massachusetts because that's where our business is focused right now. And we're a startup. We're just taking our time. We've been spending the last few years trying to dial that up. Mm-hmm. So I'll have updates on that. And we're on socials as well, Facebook and Instagram.
Excellent.
And then for me, RonnyLeblanc.com, trying to put events that are up there, but typically I'm pretty active on Facebook and the socials, and you'll see me pretty much every week. I'm doing a talk locally here. Tomorrow morning, flying out to Ohio for ParasiteCon at the Ohio Reformatory. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
I wish I could be
hanging out in a prison. Did it last year. And for people that don't know, this was the site where they filmed Shawshank Redemption, which is one of my favorite movies. It's a very cool setting and a great group of people there. But yeah, I'm constantly doing that, and then fingers crossed we'll be hopefully announcing season 5 and going with that with Expedition Bigfoot. But season 7 is now popping on travel with Paranormal Caught on camera right now.
Dude, that's amazing. And where's the best place for people to find Monsterland, both books?
Yeah, so you can get both books, 1 and 2. The black one's the first one, the white is the second, on Amazon. If you do want to get signed autographed copies, you can send me a message and get those right through the website, and I can personalize those for you and send them that way as well.
Excellent, brother. Well, once again, it's been an awesome pleasure to have you on the show, and thanks so much for making the time.
Brent.
I had a good time.
Same, brother. Same.
All right, everybody, that's going to wrap it up for us today. So hope you guys enjoyed the show, and thank you again so much for all your love and support. Remember, if you want to follow the Paranormal Portal, probably the easiest way is to head over to paranormalportal.net, and that's the homepage for the Paranormal Portal, and you'll find links to all of our different social media and sites and information about the shows, including our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/paranormalportal, or just look for Paranormal Portal on Google or whatever search engine, and you'll find links to our social media such as Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. So we're kind of all over the place, and we're spreading as well as we can. But anyway, thank you so much for the love and support. Y'all take care, and remember, we love y'all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other, help each other out, find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can. Until next time.
Well, the only time she really turned with that famous was when I rode across the creek and got down off the horse. She turned to look at me.